The cleaner. Just 1 minute brought the millionaire a $100 million contract for the millionaire N. 30 experts failed, but a humble cleaner passed by and fixed it in 1 minute, oblivious that Marcus Thorne, the billionaire CEO, silently observed her actions. What he did next astonished everyone. Before diving into this extraordinary tale, tell us in the comments where you're reading from, and don't forget to hit like if you're ready for a story of unexpected triumphs. Enjoy. This is outrageous. 30 experts, 30, and not one can crack this variable, a vexed engineer roared, clutching a coffee mug. Marcus is going to lose it, another muttered. For the third time that night, the uproar behind the frosted conference room glass intensified. In the corridor, Elena Vance diligently mopped, one earbud in, the other free to monitor the corporate bedlam. The meeting room door abruptly burst open. A dozen engineers emerged, looking drained, dark circles beneath their eyes, clipboards in hand, and utterly defeated. The last one clutched 2 pizza boxes, appearing ready to trade his diploma for a bed. Once the elevator doors shut behind them, Elena entered the room. She placed her mop in a corner, dramatically tossed her cleaning cloth into the bucket, and gazed at the vast digital whiteboard still displaying the perplexing problem. "Well, look at this mess," she murmured, grabbing a dry cloth. They didn't even bother to erase their failure. She was joking, but as her cloth wiped the screen's corners, her eyes fixated on the equation at the center. She paused. Wait a minute. She frowned, pointed at the numbers, took 2 steps back, then 3, leaned against her cleaning cart, and folded her arms. They're going through all this for something so obvious. She stepped forward, picked up a red marker, and, without conscious thought, began scribbling below the formula, a minor adjustment here, a subtle alteration there, a few diagonal lines, a flip, a simple substitution. In less than a minute, a new mathematical path materialized beneath the original. "And that's done," she declared, winking at Beatrice the mop, as if she'd performed a magic trick. At that precise moment, a voice shattered the quiet. "Who did this?" Elena jumped. Marcus Thorne, CEO of Viridian Corp., stood at the door, looking as if he'd just encountered an alien in a top-secret lab. Tall, serious, hair perfectly styled, and eyes that assessed swiftly and coldly, the kind of man who inspired more dread than respect. "Was it you?" he asked, slowly stepping inside. "No, it was Beatrice," Elena quipped, pointing to the mop in the corner. Silence. "Just kidding. It was me." Marcus approached the board, his gaze still fixed on her. His eyes shifted from Elena's face to the formula, then back to her again. He seemed deep in thought. You realize what this signifies? That we may not need to keep importing lab geniuses, perhaps janitors should get a chance once in a while," she added. He ignored the jest, eyes riveted on her solution. He pulled a tablet from his suit jacket and began typing. This is impossible. None of our consultants even conceived of this shortcut." Elena leaned against her cart, feigning indifference. "Perhaps they're too preoccupied trying to appear intelligent." "Where did you learn this?" "Oh, I studied at university for 2 years. Had to quit. Couldn't afford to continue, you know how it goes. Though I suppose you wouldn't, you're wealthy." Marcus looked up, visibly surprised. For the first time in a long while, someone in his company spoke to him like that, without fear, without flattery, and with a touch of sarcasm. "You're amusing," he murmured, almost to himself. "I'm a cleaner. Being amusing is how I survive." "Want me to wipe this off now?" she inquired, pointing to the whiteboard. "No, leave it. I need to show the team tomorrow morning." He paused, then looked back at her. "You should attend too." Elena raised an eyebrow. "What? You're promoting me to logical reasoning cleaner?" "No, I just want to comprehend how you deduced it. That's all." She deliberated for a second, then shrugged. As long as I can bring my mop, fine. Marcus Thorne, the CEO known for chilling entire rooms with a mere glance, exhaled a quiet sigh. Deal. Elena picked up the bucket, pushed the cart, and exited as if nothing unusual had transpired. Good night, boss. Oh, and next time, try smiling a little. It doesn't hurt, I promise. He stood alone, contemplating the revised equation, and for the first time in months, he smiled. The Viridian Corp boardroom was crammed. Directors, engineers, and managers, all clad in shades of gray, navy, and black, a sea of suits, tablets, and solemn expressions. The tension was palpable until the door opened and someone quite distinct stepped inside, pushing a cleaning cart. Elena Vance, in her neatly pressed blue uniform, worn sneakers, and a shy smile, paused at the doorway, observing the curious eyes now fixed upon her. Good morning, she said, adjusting her hair bun and attempting to conceal her nerves with a polite, small smile. A few murmurs rippled through the room. Marcus, seated at the head of the table, gestured to the chair beside him. You can sit down, Vance. Mind if I leave the cart by the door? Beatrice feels left out if I don't acknowledge her. She joked, eliciting a soft chuckle from one of the engineers. She sat, straightened her uniform, and folded her hands on the table, waiting. Last night, you did something extraordinary, Marcus began. We'd like to understand precisely what you perceived in that equation that the experts missed. Oh, well, she gave a nervous, little laugh, I'm not certain I did it the scientific way you folks do. I just looked at it and thought maybe it was more complicated than necessary. She pointed to the screen displaying the equation. I just simplified it, kind of like when you try to clean the floor with 3 different products but forget a damp cloth will suffice. A few quiet laughs circulated the room. Did you study in this field? One curious engineer inquired. I did 2 years of engineering, but I had to stop. Life got tough. My mother got sick, and the tuition, well, it became heavier than a full bucket, so I quit. But I genuinely love learning. I read everything I can, even medicine labels, if you'd permit me. But how do you retain all of that? Another engineer pressed. Because my mind never ceased learning, only my bank account couldn't keep pace. Marcus folded his arms. So, you believe what you did last night was luck? Elena looked him directly in the eyes. And you believe 30 years of cleaning taught me how to solve equations by luck? Julian, the technical director, cleared his throat and held up a printed sheet. If I may, I reviewed her calculations last night. The solution is absolutely correct, and what's more, he said, looking at the others, she discovered a more efficient path than our current protocol. The mood in the room shifted. The expressions on their faces now showed surprise, some admiration, some discomfort. Marcus, who until then seemed in control, leaned back in his chair. Another director with a stern expression spoke up. Do you grasp this? This is a confidential project involving investors, cutting-edge technology, and I'm just the cleaner, Elena finished. I get it, boss, but I was invited here, I didn't ask to be part of this. Julian, the technical director, interjected. Elena saw something no one else here had noticed. Elena's eyes widened. Really? Wow. I was just trying to make sense of the mess. I thought I'd messed something up. Marcus watched silently. The way she spoke, with honesty and lightness, not attempting to impress anyone, captivated him in an unexpected way. He stood and slowly walked to the digital board. What would you think about doing this more often? Elena blinked. What do you mean? Being part of the project? For now, just temporarily, as an observation assistant. You wouldn't need to relinquish your current role, just sit in on a few meetings, perhaps share some ideas, if you'd like. She looked at him for a moment, surprised. Me? Join the meetings? For real? Yes. Elena glanced around the room at everyone looking at her. She didn't perceive judgment, she saw curiosity, maybe a bit of hope. That made her slightly nervous, but she took a deep breath and responded with a smile. Well, only if I can keep wearing my uniform. That's my style. I think best in this apron. Oh, and I still want to keep cleaning, okay? Because I like it. Cleaning helps me think. Is the uniform a requirement? Marcus asked, trying to discern if she was joking. Absolutely. This one's been through at least 5 brainstorms with me, I can't just discard it now. More laughter filled the room. Marcus, for the first time, allowed a small smile to slip, one he tried to hide, but someone noticed. Someone always does. Alright, the uniform stays. And can I sit near the projector? I've always been curious to press those buttons without being ejected from the room. That depends on your behavior, Marcus said, turning to head back to his chair. I promise not to press anything without permission, at least for the first few weeks, she added, making the room laugh again. Julian, with his typical technical tone, looked at Marcus. She can contribute. Sometimes an outside perspective is exactly what we require. Marcus slowly nodded. Then it's decided. Elena Vance, from today onward, will be our observation assistant. Welcome to the project. Elena slowly rose. Thank you, truly. I never imagined something like this occurring, but I promise to give it my best. And if I can't assist with the formulas, at least I'll keep the room sparkling. She pulled the cart back, turned, and exited the room just as lightly as she had entered, leaving behind a surprise team and a thoughtful CEO. Marcus looked at the door she had passed through. He could still hear the soft whir of the cart's wheels in the hallway. He didn't quite grasp what had just begun there, but he was certain of one thing, that woman was anything but ordinary. The next day, Elena could scarcely believe she was there, sitting among artificial intelligence engineers, facing charts, code, and solemn expressions. The Viridian Corp meeting table no longer felt so distant, it was now her new vantage point. She listened intently, hands folded in her lap, her cleaning uniform spotless, her eyes curiously moving from one screen to another. Then one of the engineers let out a loud sigh in front of an unfinished equation. This calculation doesn't work, not even with magic, he muttered. Have you tried replacing the vector with a fixed set? Elena suggested, using the calmest tone. Everyone paused. Julian, the technical director, typed on his tablet, testing her idea. Within seconds, the graphs adjusted, a green light popped up. It worked again, he said, almost in disbelief. Elena smiled and shrugged. I just thought if the sink always clogs in the same spot, there's no point pouring more water. You've got to change the pipe, right? Soft laughter spread around the table, but the most intrigued of them all was Marcus, sitting at the far end, quietly observing everything. He tried to maintain distance, professionalism, detachment, but there was something about Elena that challenged his logic, and it wasn't just the math. She spoke with ease, as if nothing was too monumental to handle. When the atmosphere grew tense, she made light jokes that uplifted the mood. When someone got lost in complexity, she explained things as if reading a recipe. And still, Marcus noticed the small details, like how she spoke to the hallway plants before entering the room, or how she quietly chuckled at the team's inside jokes, even if she didn't fully grasp them, or how now and then she'd give him a curious look, as if to say, you overthink things. At the third meeting that week, Elena helped solve another issue. This is becoming a habit, Julian said, clearly impressed. She laughed. Careful, if I solve one more, you'll want to give me a bonus, then I'll have to figure out how to deal with income tax. Even Marcus allowed a quick smile, one he tried to conceal, but someone noticed. Someone always does. We're planning a team dinner tomorrow, Iris, one of the engineers, announced. Will you join us? Elena hesitated. Oh, I don't know. Aren't those things rather fancy? It's just dinner among colleagues, no formalities, Iris insisted. Still quiet, Marcus simply added, it's crucial for everyone to be there. It's part of the team experience. Elena took a deep breath and agreed. But as soon as she left work that afternoon, she panicked. A dress? Shoes? A purse? All I possess is my cleaning uniform and a backpack with a crooked zipper, she confessed to her neighbor, Miss Finch, who immediately lent her a simple but elegant purple dress and a pair of earrings that had brought good luck since 1982. The next night, the restaurant chosen by the team had dim lights, soft music, and waiters who spoke too quietly. Elena entered through the front door, and for a moment, every eye turned to her. The purple dress accentuated her delicate features, her loose hair cascaded over her shoulders, and something in the light of her eyes stood out. She looked different, yet she was still herself. The first to notice were two Viridian Corp analysts seated near the entrance. Who is she? A new investor. Must be. Look at her posture, and she arrived alone. While they whispered, Marcus, already seated in the back, looked up and froze for a second. It wasn't just surprise. It shattered the image he thought he had of Elena. This woman standing before him wasn't merely the brilliant cleaner who could solve equations, she was striking. She gave a shy wave to her colleagues and walked over. Hi. I hope I'm not too dressed up. The only things I own with heels are my brooms, she joked, trying to hide her nerves. The table laughed. Marcus didn't, but he observed her intently. During dinner, she conversed with everyone. She recounted stories from the cleaning staff with such charm that the engineers laughed until they cried. She shared how she once mistook a meeting room for the break room and nearly swept through a presentation. Even the quietest ones felt at ease. Marcus watched from a distance. Her laugh was genuine, the way she tilted her head when listening, how she didn't try to impress anyone, and yet she did. By the end of the night, as the group began to depart, she walked up to Marcus. Thank you for the invitation. No need to thank me. It was enjoyable. But tomorrow morning, I'll be back, mop and all, with more brilliant ideas if my brain assists. If not, the floor will gleam, that I can promise. He nodded, still observing her as if trying to decipher something that charts couldn't explain. Elena bid farewell, gave a quick wave to everyone, and left. When the door closed behind her, Marcus remained standing there, frozen, looking at the spot where she had been just moments before. And for the second time that week, he was left speechless. The next morning, everything at Viridian Corp was back to normal, quiet hallways, people rushing around, and technology everywhere. Elena was in uniform, pushing her cleaning cart, one earbud in, a duster in hand, the same as always, at least externally. She was humming softly as she cleaned the floor near the main elevator. Her mood was cheerful, almost as if she was dancing with the mop. Then the meeting room door opened, and Marcus stepped out. He saw her from a distance, not in a hurry. He paused for a moment, watched as she conversed with the fern near the water cooler, telling it that it looked happier after getting water. Then he noticed the light way she moved as she cleaned, almost like she was gliding through the tasks. Elena noticed his gaze and waved her cloth at him with a smile. Good morning, boss. If you step here, I'll pretend I didn't see it. She joked. Marcus just nodded, trying not to smile. They both walked to the elevator. The door opened, and they stepped in. A quiet silence settled between them, not the awkward silence between strangers, but the kind of silence between two people unsure what to say or afraid to say too much. You seem different today, he said suddenly. She looked surprised. Oh, must be the new lavender disinfectant. I'm testing it to see if it calms nervous people in elevators. No, he replied with a slight smile. It's you. You seem more serious. Sometimes I am. That's when the world feels a bit heavier than usual, she said, tugging the bucket's handle with her foot. Before he could inquire what she meant, the elevator jolted slightly, then again, and then it stopped. The lights flickered, the panel went dark. "Oh no," Elena muttered, turning to the buttons. "You've got to be kidding me." Marcus pressed the emergency button. No response. He pulled out his phone. No signal. "Looks like we're stuck," he said, clearly uncomfortable. "Perfect," she sighed, sitting down in the corner with the bucket beside her. "I'm becoming an expert in odd situations with you around. Does this happen often?" "No, but when it does, you're always part of it." "Coincidence?" "I hope so." She laughed, crossing her legs and leaning her head against the wall. "The last time I got stuck in an elevator, I was with an old lady carrying 3 grocery bags, 2 filled with fruit and a third with a live chicken. This is a much more comfortable version." Marcus leaned against the opposite wall, trying to appear calm, but his jaw betrayed his discomfort. "You don't like surprises, do you? I'm the CEO of one of the largest tech companies in the country. Surprises mean mistakes. Mistakes cost millions." She looked at him without speaking. "Are you always like this?" he asked. "So light-hearted?" "I try to be. Life didn't always give me reasons to smile, so I decided to create my own." "That's admirable." "It's survival," she corrected. "My superpower." He remained quiet for a few seconds. The elevator's emergency light cast soft shadows across their faces. "My father wouldn't comprehend that," Marcus said suddenly. Elena looked up. "Really?" "He was always obsessed with success. I grew up in a world where you were only as good as your performance. Got a 90? He'd ask why not 100. Won an award? He wanted to know if it was the biggest. There was no room for mistakes or rest." She listened quietly, giving him her full attention. "And you followed in his footsteps?" "I think I did. I never paused to question if there was another path." "But is there?" Marcus hesitated. For the first time, he seemed uncomfortable not having a clear answer. "What about your mother?" she asked, shifting the focus. "She passed away when I was young. He raised me alone. Work, discipline, routine, that's how it was. Not much talking, not much emotion." Elena took a deep breath. "Well then, allow me to tell you what it's like when life is all emotion." She adjusted her posture, looking up at the elevator's ceiling. "My mother worked all day as a seamstress, cooked for 3 households besides our own, and still found time to laugh with me and my sister at night, even when she was tired." Marcus was listening closely. "When she got sick, I dropped out of college to care for her and my little sister. And it all transpired so rapidly, there wasn't even time to grasp it. But I'm happy I did what was necessary. My mom's doing a little better, and now my sister has a shot at going to college. But anyway, here I am. I just didn't expect to end up stuck in an elevator for over half an hour with the most serious CEO in the Northern Zenith. I'm not that serious." "No. Then prove it." He looked at her, a quiet exchange of glances, challenging, almost intimate. "You make me ponder things I typically avoid," he said softly. "Like what?" "Like what my life would be like if I had taken the time to breathe, talk, notice." Elena smiled a calm smile, like someone who understands more than she says. "Maybe there's still time." Silence filled the space, but this time, it was a comfortable silence, full of unspoken words. She moved a little closer, standing beside him, their shoulders almost touching. "Funny how we spend our lives rushing, and then in a stuck elevator, we learn more about each other than in months of meetings. Maybe the pauses teach more than the plans. See? You're learning." They laughed together. Marcus looked at her for a few seconds. There was something there he couldn't quite articulate, a strange but warm connection, familiar but new. He leaned in slightly, so did she. Time seemed to slow. Their faces moved closer. His gaze dropped to her lips, then returned to her eyes. But then the lights came on, the panel lit up. Elevator in operation, the robotic voice announced. Preparing to ascend. Elena's eyes widened, and she stepped back slightly, fixing her hair as if nothing had happened. Wow, talk about a ruined movie moment, she said as she stood up. Marcus cleared his throat, clearly flustered, but stood up right after. Looks like we got out of it. Yeah, we really did, she repeated more quietly, looking at the door. When the elevator reached the top floor, Marcus and Elena walked out side by side, without a word. Something between them had changed. There was something unresolved, something quietly starting to grow. Elena returned to her routine with her cleaning cart and her earbuds hanging from her shirt collar. In the hallways, people greeted her with more respect than in the days before. She noticed and she smiled. Meanwhile, Marcus, buried in meetings and decisions, kept finding his eyes searching for Elena between rooms. Without realizing it, he began waiting for her cheerful comments or the soft sound of her laugh during breaks. But then a notification changed everything. An alert popped up on the public relations team's tablet and reached every department at once. Scandal at Viridian Corp. Cleaner without degree works on billion-dollar project. The headlines spread like wildfire. Within minutes, gossip sites, tech outlets, and even morning shows were covering the story. It went viral. The main photo showed Elena standing by a whiteboard, smiling in her cleaning uniform with her badge clipped to her pocket. The caption read, "Identified as a cleaner with no higher education, the young woman is reportedly involved in high-level technical decisions." Social media comments ranged from mockery to outrage. Next thing you know, the bus driver will be the lead engineer. This is what happens when people confuse diversity with competence. No degree needed, just know how to scrub. Elena found out while she was washing the windows in the project room. One of the interns, not realizing she was nearby, said aloud, "Did you see the cleaning lady genius scandal? They even posted a video of her." She slowly turned around. When she saw the screen on the intern's phone, it felt like the ground disappeared beneath her. It was her face, her story, her dignity turned into a joke. Quietly, she set the cloth down on the counter and walked to the locker room. She stayed there for nearly half an hour, staring at herself in the mirror. When she came out, she walked to the break room and saw part of the team gathered, talking about the news. Some looked away as soon as she entered, others stared openly, curious. She kept her head high. "You all know I'm here, right?" she said in the firmest tone she had ever used. "You could at least wait until I'm out of the room before talking about me." The silence was instant and uncomfortable. Meanwhile, Marcus stood in front of the crisis room screen, watching the fallout unfold. "Find out who leaked this," he told the IT team, "and remove all unauthorized images and videos from everywhere." "Sir," the communications director reported, "the situation's out of control. We're trying to contain it." "Don't try. Do it," he replied sharply. He left in a hurry and went down to the second floor, where he found Elena sitting in one of the meeting rooms. Her eyes were downcast, but there were no tears, just a tense face, like she was holding back a storm inside. "Elena, I saw it," he began. She interrupted. "I'm taking care of it. This is outrageous. It's prejudiced, and we won't allow." "Marcus, please." She raised her hand, asking for silence. He stopped. "I know you want to help. I know you were upset. But you don't need to protect me." The silence between them was heavy. She stood up. "I didn't get this far because someone gave me permission. I got here because I've been facing the world since I was young. It's not the first time someone has looked down on me, not the first time I've been laughed at. But this time, I expected that inside these walls, it would be different." Marcus tried to respond, but she didn't give him the chance. I don't want to be protected like I'm some well-meaning mistake that needs fixing. I want to be recognized as someone who's contributing, with ideas, with work, and above all, with dignity. He took a deep breath and stepped closer. I do recognize all of that. And I won't let them take away the value of what you're doing. Then respect me when I say that for now, I need some time. She took off her badge, the one she proudly wore every day, and placed it on the table. I need to think about whether I still want to be part of a place where a person's worth is measured by the title on the wall and not by the ideas they bring to the table. Without waiting for a reply, she turned and left the room. She walked down the hallway, ignoring the looks and whispers, went to the front desk, signed out for a temporary leave, and walked out of the building without looking back. Marcus remained by the table for a few minutes. The badge seemed to shine under the cold light of the room, small, simple, but full of meaning. In the hours that followed, the company's atmosphere changed. Everything felt quieter, as if everyone was waiting for something or someone. The next day, Marcus stepped into the elevator. The floor was clean as always, but there was no sign of the blue cart, no scent of lavender, no cloth swinging in the corner, and most of all, no presence to make that space feel less metallic and more human. During the technical meeting, he noticed more interruptions, more tension. The unexpected comments were missing, the clear thinking, the lightness. And at the end of the day, when he walked through the main hallway and saw the plant near the water cooler wilting, he understood. He missed her. Not just her logic, not just her solutions, but her presence, her voice, her laugh, her gaze. Elena wasn't just part of the project, she was part of something he didn't even know he needed until now. 3 days passed without Elena at Viridian Corp., 3 days that felt more like 3 weeks to Marcus. The technical meetings were tense, problems took longer to solve, and there was a nearly tangible emptiness in the hallways. Even the plant near the cooler looked droopy, as if it missed the person who used to talk to it every day. Marcus tried to focus on work, but every time he passed the second floor, he instinctively looked for the blue cart. When the elevator doors opened, he expected to hear her making one of her cheerful comments. During meetings, he waited for a simple remark that would untangle the most complicated issues. By the third day, he couldn't take it anymore. He asked HR for Elena's address and late in the afternoon drove his black car to a neighborhood he had never visited. The streets were narrower, the houses more modest, but there was life on every corner. Kids played on the sidewalks, neighbors chatted on their porches, and the smell of home-cooked meals filled the air. Elena's house was small but well cared for. The green gate was open, revealing a modest garden with colorful flowers and a rocking chair on the porch. Marcus parked and sat still for a moment, unsure if he was doing the right thing. Before he could back out, the front door opened, and a middle-aged woman with gray hair and a bun, wearing a floral apron, stepped out to water the plants. "Can I help you?" Serafina asked with a kind smile. "Good afternoon. I'm Marcus Thorne. I work with your daughter, Elena." Serafina's eyes lit up. "Oh, so you're Elena's boss. Come in, come in. She's talked so much about you." "I'm Serafina, her mother." Marcus hesitated. "Actually, I came to speak with her about, come in first." "In this house, guests don't stand at the door," Serafina insisted, gesturing warmly. Marcus followed Serafina into a small but cozy living room, a sofa with crochet covers, family photos on the walls, and the unmistakable smell of cake baking. A young woman around 18 sat at the table, surrounded by books and notebooks. "This is Lyra, Elena's sister," Serafina said. "Lyra, this is Mr. Thorne, your sister's boss." Lyra looked up from her studies and gave a shy smile. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Thorne. Elena always says you're very smart." "The pleasure is mine," Marcus replied, genuinely surprised by the young woman's politeness. Serafina disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a tray of coffee and slices of still-warm carrot cake. "Please have a seat. Elena's out back, tending to the plants." She does that when she needs to think. Marcus accepted the coffee, impressed by the family's natural hospitality. There was no luxury here, but there was something his millionaire home never had: warmth. Lyra's in her final year of high school, Serafina said with clear pride. She wants to go to medical school. Elena works hard to help pay for her college. Medicine is a demanding field, Marcus commented. I know, Lyra replied with determination, but Elena always says that if we don't dream big, we'll never know what we're capable of. Just then, Elena appeared in the doorway, wearing a simple t-shirt and with her hands still covered in dirt. When she saw Marcus, she stopped in her tracks. What are you doing here? Elena. Is that any way to greet a guest? Serafina scolded. No, Mom, it's fine, Elena said as she slowly walked in. I'm just surprised. Marcus stood up. I need to talk to you. In private, if possible. Serafina and Lyra exchanged glances and quietly stepped back into the kitchen, carrying the coffee tray. Elena folded her arms, waiting. The company isn't the same without you, Marcus began. I imagine you've already found other experts to solve the problems we have, but none of them solve things the way you do. And more importantly, none of them bring the same energy to the room. She raised an eyebrow. So you came all this way to tell me I'm good at lightening the mood? No. I came to tell you that you make a difference. A real one. And that the company lost more than a smart consultant. It lost someone who made me see things differently. Elena studied him for a few seconds. Marcus, I'm not coming back to be treated like a mascot, or like some interesting exception that you all tolerate. You wouldn't be. We have an important presentation this Friday. Vista City investors. They'll decide whether to fund the next phase of the project. I want you to lead the presentation. Me? You know the project better than any of us, and you have a gift for explaining complex things in a simple way. They'll adore that. Elena hesitated. What if I mess it up? Impossible. You don't mess things up. You work magic. Serafina quietly appeared in the doorway. Sweetheart, may I say something? Elena nodded. You always told me that when we have a talent, we're not supposed to hide it, we're supposed to use it. And if there are important people who want to see what you can do, perhaps it's time to show them. And besides, Lyra added, joining her mother, you always say we shouldn't give up at the first sign of trouble. Marcus watched the exchange between the three women. There was trust, mutual respect, and above all, unconditional love, something he had never experienced in his own family. All right, Elena said at last. I'll return, but on one condition. What's that? You stop trying to protect me and start treating me as an equal. Deal? She reached out her hand to shake his. Then we have an agreement, Mr. Thorne. He took her hand, feeling for the first time in days that things might finally fall into place. The following Friday, the Viridian Corp conference room was filled with investors in expensive suits and skeptical expressions. These were people accustomed to dealing in millions. They analyzed every word, every gesture, every number. Elena walked into the room wearing a blazer borrowed from Iris, but she remained true to herself. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, no heavy makeup, and the same confident smile as always. Good morning, she said, connecting her laptop to the projector. I know you're used to presentations full of technical terms and complex graphs, but today I'm going to show you why our project works using something we all understand, real-world results. For 40 minutes, Elena explained each part of the artificial intelligence system using clear and relatable examples. When she discussed learning algorithms, she compared them to teaching a child to walk. When she explained computing efficiency, she used the example of a well-organized recipe in the kitchen. The investors, who had started off skeptical, began leaning forward, asking questions, asking for clarification, showing genuine interest. The difference with our system, Elena concluded, is that it doesn't just process data, it understands context, like an experienced person who doesn't merely follow instructions but knows when to adapt the rules to get better results. When she finished, the room remained silent for a few seconds. Then one of the lead investors stood up and began clapping. The others followed. Ms. Vance, the head of the investor group, Dominic Sterling, said, "In 20 years of funding tech startups, I've rarely seen someone explain such complex ideas so clearly and convincingly. Thank you. Mr. Sterling, we're prepared to offer $100 million for the entire project." A murmur of surprise swept through the room. It was far more than anyone expected. Marcus, watching from the back of the room, couldn't hide his pride. Elena hadn't just performed well. She had won over seasoned investors with her honesty and intelligence. After the investors departed, the Viridian Corp team celebrated quietly. Elena was congratulated by everyone, but once things calmed down, she walked over to Marcus. 100 million. Seriously? You made that happen. Not me, not the company. You. She smiled, finally allowing herself to savor the victory. You know what this means? That you're brilliant. That now I can pay for Lyra's college without worrying. Marcus smiled, realizing that even in her biggest professional triumph, Elena still prioritized her family. And it also means, she added, that maybe you were right. I really can make a difference. I've always known that. For the first time since they met, they looked at each other without rush, without interruptions, without misunderstandings, and both knew something had definitely changed between them. The news of the $100 million deal spread through Viridian Corp like wildfire. Within hours, every department was discussing Elena's presentation and the incredible outcome. The atmosphere at the company, tense over the past few days, was now brimming with fresh energy. Later in the afternoon, Julian suggested an informal celebration in the break room on the 12th floor. Nothing fancy, just the main team gathering to toast the company's historic moment. No formalities today, Iris declared, popping open a bottle of champagne she had hidden in the fridge for special occasions. Tonight, we celebrate for real. The break room, usually quiet and empty after hours, was now filled with laughter and lively conversation. Elena, still wearing the borrowed blazer, was at the center of it all, but she remained true to her humble self. I just stated what you all already knew, she insisted as Julian handed her a glass of champagne. You're the ones who did the hard work. But none of us could have explained it to those investors the way you did, one of the engineers replied. You possess a gift. Marcus watched from a distance, leaning against the wall near the window with a view of Celestial Coast. There was something different about him. His shoulders were less tense, his jaw more relaxed, and even his posture seemed lighter. The presentation's success had clearly lifted a heavy weight from his shoulders. As the night progressed, people began to leave, first the older folks, then those with families waiting at home, until just a few remained in the room. I'm heading out too, Iris said, grabbing her bag. We've got that early meeting with legal tomorrow. I should go as well, Julian added. My wife's going to kill me if I'm late again. One by one, the others departed until only Marcus and Elena remained in the dimly lit room, the city lights shimmering through the panoramic window. The silence between them wasn't awkward, but it carried a different kind of tension, not the professional kind from their first days, or the strain from recent challenges. It was something quieter, more personal. Elena still held her glass, watching the bubbles slowly rise in the champagne. So, she said, breaking the silence, 100 million. That's like, a lot of money, huh? Marcus let out a quiet, genuine laugh. It is quite a bit, yes. I guess now you can buy more identical suits for your wardrobe, she teased, flashing a playful smile. My suits aren't identical, he defended, pushing off the wall and walking toward her. Oh, they're not. Let me see. She pretended to study him closely. This one's navy blue. Yesterday's was navy blue. The day before, navy blue again. They have different shades. Shades? She laughed, nearly spitting out her champagne. Really? You use the word shades to talk about clothes? Marcus moved a little closer, picking up his own glass from the coffee table. And what's wrong with nuance? Nothing wrong. It's just very you. And what does that mean? Elena looked at him, realizing how much closer they were now. He was only a few steps away, and there was something different in his eyes, less guarded, less controlled. It means you overthink everything, even the color of your clothes. And you think that's a bad thing? Not bad, just a bit much sometimes. It's nice to just let things happen naturally. Like now. His question carried a second layer of meaning, and they both knew it. Elena felt a flutter in her stomach, but she didn't pull back. Like now, she said quietly. Marcus stepped closer. They were now close enough that she could smell his subtle scent, a mix of wood and something lightly citrusy. You know, today was amazing, right? He said, slightly changing the subject, though he remained close. It was just work. It wasn't just work. It was you being you. And that made all the difference. Elena felt her face growing warm. Are you complimenting me, Mr. Thorne? I'm stating a fact, Ms. Vance. They laughed together, and the air between them grew more charged. It was as if all the previous moments, the elevator, the meetings, the teasing, the glances, had led precisely to this one. You know what the best part of today was? Elena asked, turning slightly to set her glass down but staying close to him. What? Seeing you smile. A real smile. Not that corporate one you give the investors. I do smile. You kind of fake a smile. It's not the same. Marcus was quiet for a moment, pondering her words. Maybe I've just gotten out of the habit. That's a shame. You look much better when your smile is real. The words slipped out before she could filter them, a moment of pure honesty that surprised them both. Marcus looked at her closely. Elena, what? You confuse me. Confuse how? Confuse as in, I don't know if I should keep things professional or, he didn't answer with words. Instead, he raised his hand and gently touched her face, brushing her cheek with his thumb. Elena closed her eyes for a second, feeling his touch. Marcus, I know this is complicated. I know I shouldn't. Stop thinking so much, she said, opening her eyes and looking directly at him. That was all he needed. Marcus leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, but she didn't. Instead, she leaned in too, until their lips met in a soft kiss. Hesitant at first, the kiss deepened naturally. It wasn't desperate or rushed, but full of all the unresolved moments between them. His hands moved to her waist, hers rested on his chest, feeling his quickening heartbeat. When they finally pulled apart, their foreheads touched as they caught their breath. That was, Marcus began. Unexpected, she finished with a small smile. A good kind of unexpected. A very good kind. They chuckled quietly, still close, still processing what had just happened. So, now what? Elena asked. Now, I don't know, he admitted honestly. Well, at least you're being honest. I'm always honest with you. They stayed there a few more minutes, talking softly, laughing, sharing a few more gentle kisses. It felt like a wall had come down, allowing them to connect on a level beyond the professional. When it was finally time to leave, Marcus walked her to the parking lot. Want me to drive you home? He offered. No need. I took the bus. All the more reason. Let me drive you. On the drive to her house, they talked naturally, as if the moment they shared had cleared the air for good. When they arrived, he walked her to the gate. Thanks for the ride. And for the rest of the evening. The pleasure was mine. They kissed again, this time shorter, but just as meaningful. "I'll see you tomorrow," she said. "I'll see you tomorrow," he replied. But when tomorrow came, everything had changed. Marcus arrived at the company at his usual time, greeted employees with his usual politeness, and attended the morning meetings with his usual professional manner, as if the night before had never happened. When Elena arrived for the project follow-up meeting, he barely looked at her. He answered her technical questions directly, but avoided eye contact and any conversation that wasn't strictly about work. "Marcus, can we discuss the next steps for the project?" she tried after the meeting. "Pass these tasks to Julian. He'll handle the implementation," he said curtly, without even looking up from his papers. Elena stood there for a few seconds, confused and hurt. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's normal. Just focused on work." The coldness in his voice hit like a bucket of ice water. Elena left the room without another word, but with a heavy heart. On the second day, things worsened. Marcus was even more distant, almost cold. He avoided being alone with her, passed off any communication through other team members, and when he had to speak to her, his tone was so formal it was like he was talking to a stranger. During lunch, Elena tried again. "Marcus, I need to speak with you. I'm busy right now. Schedule a meeting with my assistant." "Schedule a meeting? Seriously?" He looked at her with a blank expression. "That's the proper protocol." "Proper protocol?" The words echoed in Elena's mind like a slap in the face. That afternoon, she stayed in the break room after everyone had left, staring out the same window where just 2 days earlier they'd shared a moment together. The view was the same, but everything felt different now. The tears came without warning, not from anger, but from disappointment. Disappointment in herself for believing that moment had meant something to him, for letting herself be vulnerable, for mistaking his moment of weakness for something real. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and made a decision. The next day, at the end of the workday, Elena knocked on Marcus's office door. When he said to come in, she walked in and placed an envelope on his desk. "What's this?" he asked, not looking up. "My resignation letter." This time, he looked up, surprised. "What? You heard me. I'm resigning." "Why?" Elena looked at him, a mix of sadness and resolve in her eyes. "Because I'm not going to work in a place where I'm treated like a mistake to be ignored. Because I won't stay where my presence makes someone uncomfortable. And most of all, because I deserve more respect than this." "Elena, no," she raised her hand, cutting him off. "You made your position very clear these last few days. I got the message. Now I'm making the decision I should have made from the start." She turned to leave but paused at the door. "That night meant something to me. But I realized that to you, it was just a moment of weakness you'd rather erase. That's fine. I just didn't expect you to be too much of a coward to talk about it like an adult." And she left, closing the door behind her, leaving Marcus alone with the envelope and the weight of his own choices. The days after Elena's resignation were some of the longest in Marcus Thorne's life. For the first time in his fast-moving career, he couldn't fully focus on work. His meetings were still efficient but robotic. His decisions were still accurate, but the spark he'd found in the last few weeks was gone. The office felt bigger, colder, and quieter. Even the team noticed the difference. Julian tried bringing it up a few times, but Marcus shut down any conversation that came close to Elena's name. On the third day, he couldn't take it anymore. He picked up the phone and dialed her number. It rang once, twice, 3 times, then went to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Elena. If it's important, leave a message. If it's spam, you already know." He hung up without leaving a message. He tried again the next day, and the next. Same result, voicemail. On the 5th day, after one more failed call, Marcus made an impulsive decision. He cancelled his afternoon meetings and drove to Elena's house. When he got to her neighborhood, everything looked exactly the same as on his first visit, but something in the air felt different. The same kids played in the street, the same neighbors chatted on their porches, but now Marcus felt like an outsider. He parked in front of the house and sat in the car for a few minutes before finally stepping out. He took a deep breath and walked up to the green gate. Serafina was in the garden, watering the same colorful flowers, but when she saw Marcus, her warm expression turned into something more guarded, almost protective. "Good afternoon, Miss Serafina," he greeted her, trying to sound casual. "Good afternoon, Mr. Thorne," she replied, without the warmth of their first meeting. "I'd like to speak with Elena, if possible." Serafina looked him over for a few seconds, as if weighing his intentions. "She's not here," she said finally. "Do you know when she'll be back?" "No, would you mind letting her know I stopped by?" Serafina sighed and wiped her hands on her apron. "Mr. Thorne, with all due respect, my daughter is a strong woman, but she also has a sensitive heart. If she doesn't want to talk to you, she must have her reasons." Marcus lowered his head, understanding the message between the lines. "I made a mistake. A big one. That's between the two of you. But if you'll allow me a piece of advice," Serafina stepped closer to the gate, "when you hurt someone you care about, there's no use waiting for time to fix it. Sometimes you have to go after them and show you've truly changed." Marcus nodded, thanked her, and walked away, but Serafina's words echoed in his mind the whole way back. That same night, Marcus decided to try a different approach. He opened his laptop and started writing an email. He wrote and deleted at least 10 different versions, trying to find the right words to express how he felt. In the end, he went with something simple and direct. "Elena, I know I don't deserve your attention right now, but I need you to know that what happened between us meant a lot to me. The way I reacted afterward was cowardly and unfair to you. The Tech Future Celestial Coast event is on Friday. I'll be giving the main presentation about our project. I'd truly like you to be there, even if you don't want to talk to me. Please come. You deserve to see the public recognition of the work you helped build. Marcus." He hit send before he could change his mind again. The reply came the next day, short and direct, "I'm not going." 2 words that carried the full weight of Elena's disappointment and pain. Marcus spent the rest of the week trying to focus on his presentation, but his thoughts were constantly divided. The Tech Future Celestial Coast Conference was one of the most important tech events on the West Coast. Representatives from top Vista City companies would be there, along with international investors and the tech media. It was the perfect stage to present the project that had secured a $100 million investment. It should have been Marcus Thorne's big moment, but all he could think about was how that success meant nothing without the person who had made it all possible. On Friday morning, the Beacon Convention Center was packed. Over 1,000 people moved through the halls, networking around every corner, with conversations in multiple languages creating a buzz of anticipation. Marcus arrived 2 hours before his presentation, as he always did. He checked the equipment, tested the slides, mentally rehearsed every transition. Everything was technically perfect. Marcus called Dominic Sterling, the same investor who had made the multi-million-dollar offer. "Looking forward to your talk today. I hear you've got some exciting updates." "We hope to make a strong impression," Marcus replied, shifting into his corporate polite mode. "And that brilliant young woman who gave the last presentation, Elena? Will she be speaking today?" The question hit like a punch to the gut. "She's focused on other projects at the moment." Sterling raised an eyebrow but didn't press further. Meanwhile, 15 kilometers away, Elena was on the living room couch at home with Lyra beside her, watching the live stream of the conference on her laptop. "Are you sure you don't want to go?" Lyra asked for the 10th time. "I mean, it's your project too." "I'm sure," Elena answered, though her voice didn't sound fully convinced. "Mom said he came here looking for you." "I know. And you didn't even want to talk to him." There was nothing to say. Lyra studied her sister's face. You know, Elena, when you like someone and you're hurt, sometimes we make decisions out of pride that we end up regretting. Elena looked at her younger sister. Since when are you a relationship expert? Since I started watching my big sister suffer over a guy who's clearly suffering too. Back at the convention center, there were 15 minutes left before Marcus's presentation. He was backstage, reviewing his notes one last time, when Julian walked over. All set, boss. All set, Marcus confirmed, though something in his voice sounded different. You okay? You seem tense. I'm always tense before big presentations. Not like this, Julian observed. It feels like something's missing. Marcus didn't answer, but Julian was right. Something was missing. Someone was missing. The announcer stepped onto the main stage. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce the CEO of Viridian Corp., Marcus Thorne, who's here to speak to us about groundbreaking advances in advanced data science and artificial intelligence. Applause echoed through the packed auditorium. Marcus walked onto the stage with his usual confident posture, but inside, he felt an unusual anxiety. Good afternoon, he began, his voice ringing through the speakers. Today I'm going to present a project that represents a major step forward in artificial intelligence. He clicked to the first slide, but for just a second, he hesitated. Normally his presentations flowed with ease, but today the words felt mechanical, too rehearsed. Our system has developed an innovative approach to processing complex data that, Marcus stopped. He looked at the screen, then out at the audience. Hundreds of faces watched him, waiting, but all he could think about was how naturally, how clearly, Elena had explained those same concepts. That allows us to, he tried again, but the words wouldn't come. A low murmur began to spread through the audience. Marcus Thorne, known for his flawless presentations, was clearly frozen. At home, Elena was watching, heart pounding. Is he not feeling well? Lyra asked. He's nervous, Elena replied, though her voice held real concern. On screen, Marcus tried to gather himself, but it was clear he was struggling. He stared at the slides, but the technical terms that usually came so easily now felt hollow. Sorry, he said to the audience. Let me collect my thoughts. But even that pause didn't help. It was as if he'd lost his connection to his own work. Elena suddenly stood up from the couch. Where are you going? Lyra asked. I need to, Elena hesitated, eyes still on the screen, watching Marcus fight to continue. Come on, she ran to her room, changed clothes quickly, and called out to her mom. Mom, I'm going out. I'll be back soon. Where to, honey? To save a proud idiot. Serafina smiled, knowing precisely what that meant. Back at the convention center, Marcus gave it one more try. The system we developed uses learning algorithms that can, he paused again. The silence in the auditorium was becoming uncomfortable. Some in the crowd started whispering to each other. That's when he saw her. Elena had just entered through a side door. She was in jeans and a simple blouse, her hair pulled back hastily, like she'd rushed out the door. But to Marcus, she'd never looked more beautiful. She moved quietly along the side of the room, avoiding drawing attention, but her eyes stayed fixed on him. When she reached the front, she made a small gesture, signaling she was going to come up. Marcus gave the slightest nod. Elena stepped onto the stage from the side stairs, careful not to interrupt completely. The audience began whispering, curious about who she was. She walked over to Marcus and whispered something only they would understand. Remember when you said I explain things like I'm giving a recipe? So, treat this like you're teaching your mom how to make fudge. It was a nod to their past conversations, the laughs they'd shared, those moments when everything had just flowed. Marcus let out a genuine laugh, the first real one in days. Thank you, he whispered back. Elena stepped back but stayed on stage, a quiet support. Marcus turned back to the audience, and now he looked completely different, relaxed, natural, fully present. "I apologize for the interruption," he said with a smile the audience wasn't used to seeing. Sometimes we need a reminder that even the most advanced technology in the world only matters if we can explain it in a human way. And that's when the real presentation began. Instead of heavy technical terms, he used simple comparisons. He explained learning algorithms by comparing them to how a child learns to recognize familiar faces. He described computational efficiency using the image of a well-organized kitchen where every ingredient has its proper place. The audience, once restless, now leaned in, completely engaged. Genuine laughter filled the room as he made clever comparisons, and quiet murmurs of approval followed each elegantly simple explanation. "The difference with our system," Marcus concluded, echoing the same words Elena had used during the investor presentation, "is that it doesn't just process information, it understands context, like someone with experience, not just following the rules, but knowing when to adjust them to get the best results." When he finished, the silence lasted only a second before the room burst into enthusiastic applause. The audience rose in a standing ovation that went on for nearly 2 minutes. Marcus looked at Elena, who was quietly clapping in the corner of the stage, tears of pride in her eyes. After the presentation, once the congratulations and compliments had died down, Marcus went looking for Elena backstage. She was leaning against the wall, watching the activity around her. "Elena," he said as he approached, still taking in everything that had just happened. "Hi," she replied with a small but genuine smile. "You came." "I did." "Why?" She shrugged. "Because even though you're a proud idiot, I couldn't just watch you struggle on that stage." Marcus took a deep breath. "I need to tell you something." "Go ahead." He pulled her aside, away from curious eyes. "You're the only person who's ever made me want to be more human." Elena looked at him, surprised by the raw honesty in his words. "Marcus?" "No, let me finish. I spent my whole life building walls, keeping distance, being professional above all else. And then you came along, in your cleaning uniform, making jokes about plants, and suddenly I started wondering if there was another way to live." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "When we kissed, I panicked. Not because it meant nothing, but because it meant everything. And I didn't know how to handle that. So you decided to pretend it never happened. It was the worst decision I've ever made." Elena was quiet for a few seconds, letting it all sink in. "And now?" she finally asked. "Now I want to try again. Do it right this time, if you'll give me a chance." She studied him, seeing the real vulnerability in his eyes. "A chance for what, exactly?" "To find out who I can be when I'm not trying to be perfect all the time." Elena smiled, truly smiled for the first time in days. "That's going to take some work." "No, I'm counting on it." And for the first time in days, they both smiled for real. In the days following the conference, everything at Viridian Corp started to change. Marcus was more relaxed, more engaged in meetings, and even his smiles felt more natural. Elena was now officially back on the project, with a formal position as a specialist consultant, a fair salary, and the recognition she deserved. They worked together with a rhythm that impressed the whole team. Ideas flowed easily, problems were solved faster, and there was a new lightness in the air that hadn't been there before. But there was also something lingering, an unresolved tension, a conversation that still needed to happen, and feelings that were being carefully avoided while they focused on work. It was a Wednesday when Elena received the phone call that would change everything. She was in the project room, reviewing code with Julian, when her phone rang. The number wasn't familiar, but something told her to answer. "Hello, Elena Vance?" "Yes, that's me. This is the engineering department at Evergreen University. I'm calling about your application for the International Advanced Data Science and Artificial Intelligence Scholarship." Elena nearly dropped the phone. Months ago, in the middle of a sleepless, dream-filled night, she had applied to a scholarship program that seemed far too impossible to ever come true. She had practically forgotten all about it. Yes. I'm pleased to inform you that you've been selected. The scholarship covers the full master's program in advanced data science and artificial intelligence, along with housing and living expenses. It's an exceptional opportunity. The world around Elena seemed to pause. Is this real? Completely real. The program starts in 6 weeks. We'll need your decision by Friday. May I send you all the details by email? Yes, please. When she hung up, Elena stood still for several minutes, trying to process what had just happened. Evergreen. A full master's degree. Full scholarship. It was everything she had once dreamed of when she had to leave college behind. Julian noticed the look on her face. You okay? I think so. That was some unexpected news. Good news? The best kind. But even as she said it, her eyes instinctively searched for Marcus through the glass wall of the meeting room. He was focused on a video call, gesturing as he explained something to the people on the screen. That night, Elena came home with her mind racing. Serafina and Lyra were in the kitchen preparing dinner when she walked in with an expression that was both excited and confused. Did something happen? Serafina asked, immediately sensing something was amiss. Evergreen offered me a full scholarship for a master's degree. Lyra dropped the spoon she was holding. Evergreen. Like, the evergreen. The real one. Serafina stepped closer, drying her hands on her apron. Sweetheart, that's wonderful. It's everything you ever wanted. Yeah, Elena agreed, but her voice lacked the excitement one might expect. Then why do you look worried? Lyra asked, always perceptive. Elena sat down at the kitchen table, resting her head in her hands. Because now I have a life here. A job I love. People who care about me. You're talking about Marcus, Serafina said, not as a question but as a statement. Among other things, yes. Serafina sat next to her daughter. Elena, you always taught me we shouldn't pass up opportunities just because we're afraid. It's not fear, Mom. It's complicated. And what does your heart say? Elena stayed quiet for a long moment. It says I need to go. That this might be my only real chance to earn the degree I've always wanted. To prove to myself I can do it. Then you already know the answer. The next day, Elena arrived at the company early. She needed to talk to Marcus before the day swallowed them up. She found him in the elevator, heading up to the 12th floor. Good morning, she said as she stepped in. Good morning. You're here early. I needed to speak with you privately. Something in her tone made Marcus focus immediately. Is something wrong? Not wrong. Just news. When they reached his floor, Marcus led her into his office and closed the door. What's going on? Elena took a deep breath. Evergreen offered me a full scholarship for a master's in advanced data science and artificial intelligence. Marcus's face shifted through several expressions in just a few seconds, surprise, pride, and then something that looked like sadness, though he tried to hide it quickly. Elena, that's incredible. Evergreen is the top university in the field. I know. Are you going to accept? I already did. The silence that followed was heavy. Marcus walked over to the window, looking out over celestial coast below. When does it start? In 5 weeks. 5 weeks, he repeated, more to himself than to her. Marcus, he turned to her with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. You don't have to explain. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You'd be crazy not to take it. I just wanted you to know that these past few months have been the best of my professional life. And my personal life too. Same for me. They looked at each other for a few seconds, both knowing there was more to say, but neither wanting to make the goodbye harder than it already was. "I'm going to miss you," Marcus said finally. "I'll miss you too. The company won't be the same without you. You'll be fine. You're all brilliant. You're the one who brought the brilliance." In the weeks that followed, Elena split her time between wrapping up projects at Viridian Corp and preparing for the move. There were documents to handle, flights to book, and a whole life to pack into a few boxes. The team organized a small farewell party in the conference room. There was cake, laughter, heartfelt speeches, and plenty of promises to keep in touch. Elena tried to keep the mood light, making jokes about how she'd miss fighting with the coffee machine and chatting with the hallway plants. Marcus attended the party, but he kept his distance. He shook her hand politely, wished her luck with school, and left early, saying he had an urgent meeting. On her last day, Elena made a point of cleaning off her desk herself, packing a few personal items into a small box. She was just about to leave when Marcus appeared. "Can I help with that?" "No need. It's just a few things." He took the box anyway. "Let me carry it to your car." They walked silently through the hall she had come to know so well, first as a cleaner, then as a consultant. Every step seemed to carry the weight of shared memories. In the parking lot, Marcus placed the box in the back seat of the borrowed car Elena was using. "So, this is it," she said, trying to sound casual. "This is it. Will you take care of the plant by the water cooler? It's kind of dramatic. Needs attention. I'll take care of it. And if you need someone to explain algorithms using cooking metaphors, Julian did okay in the training I gave him." Marcus smiled, a real one this time. "No one explains things like you do. You'll get there. And you'll learn to loosen up too. Promise?" "I'll try." She reached out to shake his hand, but he ignored it and pulled her into a hug, a long, tight hug filled with all the unspoken things between them. When they pulled apart, both had tears in their eyes. "Take care of yourself, Elena." "You too, Marcus." She got in the car, started the engine, and waved through the window before driving off. Marcus stood there until the car disappeared around the corner. That night, alone in his apartment, Marcus walked to the window that looked out over Celestial Coast. The city sparkled with its usual night lights, but everything seemed dimmer without her there. He grabbed his laptop and started doing something he had never done in his professional life, a search that had nothing to do with business or technology. How to surprise someone special. Unique romantic ideas. How to show love in an unforgettable way. He spent hours taking notes, making plans, because for the first time in his life, Marcus Thorne had something more important than work to focus on. Elena Vance deserved an unforgettable surprise, and he had 5 weeks to plan something that would change both their lives forever. The next morning, Marcus arrived at the office with a different energy. He cancelled all non-essential meetings and asked Julian to come to his office. "I need your help with a personal project," he said, something he'd never said before. "Of course, boss. What do you need?" "I'm going to do something completely outside of my usual style, and I'll need everyone here to help me." Julian smiled, already guessing what it was about. "Is this about Elena?" "It's all about Elena." And for the first time in weeks, Marcus gave a real smile, because he had a plan, and it was going to work. It had to. 6 months had passed since Elena left for Evergreen. 6 months of intense classes, advanced labs, late-night study sessions, and the constant feeling that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The master's program in advanced data science and artificial intelligence was everything she'd hoped for, challenging, inspiring, and life-changing. But there were moments, especially during the quiet nights in her dorm room, when her mind drifted back to Celestial Coast, to corporate hallways, to office plants that needed conversation, and to a blue-eyed CEO who had learned how to truly smile. They kept in touch now and then, at first through professional emails, later more casual messages. Marcus always asked about her classes, she always asked about the company and about the plant near the water cooler. Neither of them mentioned missing each other, but the feeling was always there between the lines. Lyra's graduation was set for a Friday in June. Elena had gotten special permission from the university to come back and be there for the most important academic moment in her sister's life. Lyra had been accepted into the medical program at Cascadia Institute with a partial scholarship, something Elena could now help support with her own research grant. The flight back to Celestial Coast was filled with nerves and anticipation. Elena didn't know if she'd see Marcus, if he even knew she was coming, or if it would just be another short, quiet visit with her family. When she arrived home, the welcome was as warm as ever. Serafina cried, Lyra screamed with joy, and the whole neighborhood seemed to know that Serafina's daughter was back from the fancy university. "You've changed," Serafina said, studying her daughter's face during dinner. "Changed how?" "More grown up. More confident. Evergreen's been good for you." "It has," Elena agreed, though there was something in her voice that didn't escape her mother's ears. But, Mom. I'm happy." "Happy isn't the same as feeling complete," Lyra said, always the observant one. Elena changed the subject, but she knew her sister was right. The graduation ceremony was set to take place in Lyra's school gym, decorated with blue and gold banners and rows of neatly arranged chairs. Elena arrived an hour early, helping the family find good seats and chatting with other proud parents. She was taking pictures of Lyra in her cap and gown when she noticed something odd. Staff were setting up something that definitely hadn't been there during their visit the day before, a small extra stage, complete with a professional sound system. "That's strange," she murmured to Serafina. "That wasn't there yesterday when we came to check the place out." "Maybe it's for the keynote speaker," her mother suggested, though she looked just as puzzled. The ceremony began right on time. Lyra looked radiant as she walked gracefully across the main stage to receive her diploma. Elena cried with pride when her sister's name was called, remembering all the sacrifices they'd made to get to that moment. After the diplomas were handed out, the school principal stepped up to the microphone. "Before we close our ceremony," he said, "we have a special presentation, a guest who insisted on being here today for a very personal tribute." Elena frowned. That definitely hadn't been part of the program. "Please welcome, Marcus Thorne, CEO of Viridian Corporation." Elena's heart stopped. Marcus stepped onto the additional stage, wearing a sharp navy blue suit, but there was something different about him. He looked nervous, almost vulnerable. He adjusted the microphone and looked straight at her in the crowd. "Good evening, everyone. I know I'm interrupting an important celebration, and I apologize for that. But sometimes, when you meet the person who completely changes your life, you can't wait for the perfect moment, you have to create it." Curious murmurs spread through the crowd. Elena was frozen, unable to fully process what was happening. "A few months ago, I met an extraordinary woman. A woman who solved a problem that 30 experts couldn't. A woman who taught me that intelligence doesn't come with a diploma, that wisdom isn't tied to a zip code, and that sometimes the best solutions come from the most unexpected places." He paused, clearly emotional. "Elena Vance. You used to clean the floors at my company, but you ended up cleaning my heart." A collective gasp echoed through the room. Serafina held onto Elena's arm, who sat wide-eyed. "You taught me how to really laugh. You showed me that talking to plants isn't crazy, it's kindness. You showed me that explaining complicated things in simple ways is a rare gift. And most of all, you taught me that I could be a better person if I stopped trying so hard to be perfect." Marcus took a deep breath, visibly nervous. "I know you're at Evergreen now, chasing your dreams, and I don't want to get in the way of that. But I also know life is too short to let love slip by just because the timing isn't ideal." He stepped down from the stage and began walking toward her. The audience turned as he passed, creating a path between the chairs. "Elena, when you left, I realize that professional success means nothing if you have no one special to share it with. I realize that important meetings are far less important than spontaneous laughter. And I realize that I love you." He stopped in front of her, as she sat there completely stunned. "I love you for who you are. Funny, brilliant, challenging, caring. I love you for making jokes during serious moments, and for taking seriously the moments I thought were just jokes." Marcus knelt down right there in the middle of the packed gymnasium and pulled out a small box from his pocket. "Elena Vance, will you marry me? And before you answer, just know, I already spoke with Evergreen. They have an executive master's program that allows remote learning. You don't have to choose between your dreams and us." The entire room fell completely silent. Even the kids stopped making noise. Elena looked at the man kneeling in front of her, the same man who had once been cold and distant, now making a public declaration in the middle of a high school graduation. "Marcus Thorne," she said slowly, rising, "you are completely out of your mind." He smiled, waiting. "And I love that about you," she finished, holding out her hand for him to slip on the ring. The room erupted in applause and cheers. Lyra jumped out of her seat, Serafina cried, and everyone in the graduating class's families clapped for a couple they barely knew, but whose story had clearly moved them. Marcus stood up and kissed her, a kiss full of everything they had missed and a promise for what was to come. When they pulled apart, Elena looked into his eyes with that mischievous smile he adored. "But I have one condition," she said, loud enough for the mic to pick up. "Anything," he said, still holding her close. "I'll only marry you if you clean the house today." Her laughter echoed through the gym, followed by his, and then by the laughter of everyone in the room. "Deal," he said. "As long as you teach me how to talk to plants properly." "Deal," she replied. And there, in the middle of a high school gym in Celestial Coast, during a graduation ceremony, two people who had met in the most unexpected way decided to write the rest of their story together. Lyra came running over, still in her cap and gown. "Does this mean you're coming back?" she asked, hugging her sister. "It means we're going to figure it out," Elena answered, looking at Marcus. "Together. And I get the world's coolest CEO brother-in-law," joked Lyra. "You'll have a brother-in-law who's going to learn how to make brigadeiros and clean a house properly," Marcus replied, getting more laughs from the whole family. Serafina walked over and hugged them both. "Welcome to the family, son," she said to Marcus. "I hope you're ready for lots of food, noise, and honesty." "I'm ready for everything," he said, "especially to be happy." And as the graduation party carried on around them, Elena and Marcus stood there, hand in hand, planning a future that would be anything but predictable, just the way they liked it. 3 months after the proposal in the gym, Serafina's house was in a state of organized chaos. Colorful streamers hung from every corner, guest lists were taped to the fridge, and the constant smell of food being tested for the big day filled the air. Elena had decided she wanted a wedding that truly reflected who they were, genuine, fun, and full of love. No fancy ballrooms or over-the-top decorations. The ceremony would take place in the family's backyard, with Latin food prepared by aunts and cousins, and a playlist mixing salsa, merengue, and even a few elevator music tracks that had become inside jokes between the couple. "Are you sure you don't want something a bit more sophisticated?" Marcus asked for the 10th time while helping hang string lights between the backyard trees. "Marcus Thorne, if you ask that again, I'll marry Julian instead," Elena warned, adjusting the flowers she'd picked up herself at the Central Market. "Julian doesn't know how to make brigadeiros," Marcus replied, making her laugh. "True. You're staying." Serafina watched them from a distance, smiling at how naturally Marcus had become part of the family over the past few months. He had learned how to season feijoada, play dominoes with Elena's uncles, and even picked up a few Spanish words, enough to make Serafina laugh at his pronunciation. The morning of the wedding was sunny, with a light breeze that made the decorations dance gently. Elena woke up at her mother's house, surrounded by Lyra and 3 cousins who had traveled in for the celebration. Nervous? Lyra asked, helping her sister into the simple but elegant dress they'd chosen together. Not at all, Elena replied, surprisingly calm. It's strange, but it feels like the most natural thing in the world. Even though you're marrying a millionaire CEO. I'm not marrying a millionaire CEO. I'm marrying Marcus, the guy who talks to plants and blushes when he doesn't get my math jokes. Across town, Marcus was having a very different kind of morning. His apartment was filled with Julian, 3 company engineers, and his own father, Mr. Thorne, who had flown in from Vista City especially for the wedding. Son, are you sure about this? Asked Mr. Thorne for the 5th time, adjusting his son's tie with slightly shaky hands. Dad, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. She's not who I pictured for you. Marcus stopped combing his hair and looked at his father in the mirror. She's better than anything you or I ever imagined. Mr. Thorne studied his son's face, seeing a happiness he'd never witnessed before. Then I approve, he said at last, with a small smile. Julian, who had been watching, stepped closer. Boss, you're more nervous than when you pitched to those Japanese investors. Those investors were just money. Today is the rest of my life. You scared? I'm scared I'm not good enough for her, Marcus admitted, a rare moment of vulnerability. Man, you learned how to make brigadeiros for her. If that's not true love, I don't know what is. Julian joked. The ceremony was set for 4 o'clock in the afternoon. By 3:30, the Vance family backyard was packed. Viridian Corp colleagues sat next to neighborhood friends, engineers chatted in English with aunts who answered in Spanish, and kids ran around the chairs decorated with colorful ribbons. Marcus arrived on time, but his hands were visibly shaking as he greeted the guests. Serafina came over with a motherly smile. Breathe, son. It's just a wedding, not a corporate merger. It's worse than a corporate merger, he confessed. In a merger, the worst that happens is I lose money. Here, if I mess up, I lose Elena. You're not going to lose anything. She loves you just the way you are, nervous, perfectionist, and completely in love. The music started to play, a soft version of La Vida es una fiesta, which Elena had picked because a wedding should have joyful music, not a funeral march. Lyra came out first as maid of honor, followed by 2 cousins as bridesmaids, and then from the far end of the backyard, Elena appeared. She wasn't walking in some solemn ritual. She was practically dancing her way to the altar, greeting guests, waving at kids, and even stopping to fix the crooked tie of a little cousin. When she finally reached Marcus, he was smiling from ear to ear. You took your time, he whispered. I couldn't just rush past everyone without saying hi. That would be rude, she whispered back with a grin. The officiant, a family friend who had become certified just for the occasion, started the ceremony with a mix of Portuguese, English, and a few Spanish phrases that made the whole family laugh. We are gathered here today to celebrate the love between Elena and Marcus, a love that began in an unusual way, grew in unexpected ways, and is now becoming official in, well, an unusual way too, he said, gesturing toward the decorated backyard. When it was time for the vows, Marcus pulled a piece of paper from his pocket, his hands still shaking. Elena, I wrote and rewrote this at least 20 times, but in the end, I realized all I really needed to say is simple. You've taught me that life is better when we don't take everything so seriously. You taught me that intelligence comes in many forms, and the best one is knowing how to make others laugh. And you taught me that true love means someone accepting you even when you wear the same suit every day. The crowd laughed, and even Marcus smiled at his own nerves. I promise to love you, respect you, and never again pretend that our special moments didn't mean something to me. And I promise to learn how to cook at least 5 Latin dishes before our first anniversary. I do, yelled one of the aunts from the back, making everyone laugh. Elena hadn't prepared anything written. She took Marcus's trembling hands and spoke from the heart. Marcus Thorne, you came into my life when I was scrubbing the floors at your company, and somehow, over these past months, we ended up scrubbing away our own wounds, our own fears, our own insecurities. She paused, holding back emotion. You gave me the chance to show I'm more than a cleaning uniform, and I gave you the chance to show you're more than an expensive suit. I promise to keep challenging you, keep making you laugh, and keep reminding you that plants grow better when you talk to them. And I promise to keep pretending I understand your math jokes, Marcus added, making Elena burst out laughing. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the officiant declared. You may kiss the bride. The kiss was met with applause, cheers, and the sound of Latin music that started playing right after the ceremony. The reception that followed was just as Elena had imagined it, a big buffet with homemade food, drinks ranging from cold beer to fruit punch made by the aunts, and lots of dancing. Marcus, who had taken secret salsa lessons over the past 2 months, surprised everyone with his moves. He wasn't perfect, but he was having fun, and that's what mattered. Who is this man, and what did he do with my boss? Julian muttered, watching Marcus spin Elena on the makeshift dance floor. That's the real Marcus, Iris said. Elena just melted the layers of ice he'd built around himself. As the night went on, the speeches grew more emotional, the dancing more relaxed, and the laughter more frequent. Serafina gave a toast, saying her daughter had found someone who truly completed her. Mr. Thorne, visibly moved, admitted he had never seen his son so happy. Around 11, as the party started to wind down, Marcus and Elena stepped away to a quiet corner of the yard. So, Miss Thorne, he said, still holding her hand, how does it feel to be officially married to a CEO? How does it feel to be officially married to a genius cleaner? She shot back. Feels like I'm way too lucky. Well, you better get used to it, because you're not getting rid of me anytime soon. They stood there for a few minutes, watching their guests, their families now one family, and thinking about the future. Marcus, I have an idea, Elena said suddenly. You always do. What is it this time? What if we started a company together? Not a traditional tech company, but one focused on education programs, to teach kids from underserved communities coding, that kind of thing. Go on. We'll call it something like Nebula Initiatives. The idea is to show that talent exists everywhere. It just needs a chance. Marcus looked at her, once again amazed by her ability to think of others, even on her wedding day. You know that's brilliant, right? I do. And I also know you'll want spreadsheets and projections before you agree. Actually, he said, pulling her in for another kiss, I'm in. No spreadsheets, no projections. Just because it's a beautiful idea from an even more beautiful person. Careful, Mr. Thorne, you're getting way too romantic. I've just learned that life is better when you have the right person to share it with. 3 years later, sitting at the headquarters of Nebula Initiatives, watching a group of young people present their first programming projects, Marcus glanced at Elena. She was laughing with one of the students who had just made a joke about algorithms, explaining complex ideas with the same simple clarity as always. She wasn't your typical genius. She was the kind of woman who cleaned the world with soap, humor, and love. What did you think of Elena and Marcus's journey? Share your thoughts below, and if this story inspired you, consider subscribing for more tales of transformation.